that life is often about the stories we tell ourselves. And we look for points of evidence in our lives to support the thesis that I am overwhelmed. I'm busy. I have no free time whatsoever. I work around the clock. I never see my family. I'm spending my life doing housework, whatever it is.
Big, meaningful projects can create a feeling of more time rather than less time. On the surface, it makes no sense. Can you walk our listeners through that?
So, one of the examples I give in big time is my undertaking of reading War and Peace. So, War and Peace is really an excellent book. Tolstoy's epic of the Napoleonic Wars in Russia, but it is also known for being a very big book. It's like 1,400 plus pages. It's huge. But War and Peace also comprises it's 361 extremely short chapters. Each chapter is only about 3 or 4 pages. Takes about, less than 10 minutes to read. So what I decided to do is read 1 chapter a day in War and Peace for 361 days, right? So for 1 year. And it was awesome. Because I was reading it slow enough because I didn't have this oppressive sense that there's so much book I had to get through. Like I was just focusing on the chapter I was in. And so I could read it slowly. And so I could actually pay attention to details. And I spotted, plot points that you wouldn't see if you were racing through the certain connections. And, it's like, oh, that's so, or even there's sometimes even some fun, timely matchups. Like, it was spring in Russia in May with all the snow was melting. And it was like, early spring for me too. Or then, I got to October and it was turning cold in Moscow and the French are fleeing. And it's like, well, it's getting cold here too. So it's some fun, timely matchups with that. But the idea is, I cannot tell myself I have no time. Like I had the time to read War and Peace, you know? So my mental story I am telling myself has to take into account the point of evidence that I had time to read War and Peace. Now, granted, I was only spending, 5 to 10 minutes a day on it over the course of the year, but the truth is I still read it. And so I think that life is often about the stories we tell ourselves. And we look for points of evidence in our lives to support the thesis that I am overwhelmed. I'm busy. I have no free time whatsoever. I work around the clock. I never see my family. I'm spending my life doing housework, whatever it is that is your particular story. And I'm sure there is some evidence that could support that, right? There's a night you work long. There's a week where you don't see your family much. There's a day when the house is a disaster and you spend your whole day doing housework. But life is bigger than that. Time is bigger than that. And so we want to make sure we have points of evidence that are pointing to a different story. And so when you put big, meaningful things in your life, you become the kind of person who has the time to do big, meaningful things. And so if I have time to tackle War and Peace, there's probably a lot of other things I have time to tackle too. And that is the story I'm telling myself. And so I encourage other people to think about how they could put a big, meaningful project into their lives in a way that is sustainable and doable for you, and how that might change the story that you have about what fits.
I'm going to add that to my list because that's a great one. I did the same thing with the Bible by breaking it up into bite-sized pieces with the Bible in a year. And it was really interesting. It's one of those very overwhelming things that a lot of people talk about wanting to do. But if you break it up into 15 to 20-minute increments on a daily basis, it's very easy to accomplish in a year. And so I like the idea as well. My son's reading a Dostoevsky book right now, my 17-year-old. And he said, Dad, I read 1 chapter and then I actually take the concepts in my notes and I put it into chat. And then I look for things that I'm not thinking about. And then I go into the next chapter and I'm like, gosh, he's taking the time to kind of not only look at his perspective, but gather some different ideas that might be unique and then go back and using AI to do it. And super interesting, not something that I've ever done, but he's breaking it up into little pieces and it's allowing him to accomplish bigger goals. He's often very good with the incremental wins, where I spent a lot of time in my life having to get better at those versus the ones that were, just results oriented. Let's get to the end of the goal. And I think incremental winning is also really positive for us in life in general.
Yeah, well, small things done repeatedly truly do add up. And, the thing is that time is going to pass anyway. Like that year was going to pass one way or another. And I could spend 5 to 10 minutes a day reading War and Peace, or I could not. But by doing it day after day, I got through the book.
And you feel like that's something that you did that was very meaningful, and that big project allowed you to break it down, but you were also maximizing the time you had in the day, um, and it probably maximized your feeling of accomplishment in general.
Absolutely. And I've become such a big fan of year-long projects since doing this. I mean, I spent then the next year reading all the works of Shakespeare. I've read, all the works of Jane Austen. I listened to all the works of Bach, listened to all the works of Beethoven. This year, I'm working on all the works of Mozart. So that's been a fun thing as well. I'm not sure what next year will bring, but I'll figure that out eventually.
Have you always been a fan of classical music, or is that something that you've loved more as you've gotten older?
I've always been a fan. I played piano as a kid, and I did a lot of singing, especially when I got into college and afterwards. I've loved singing like with big orchestras, like big works and things like that. So I'm a huge classical music fan, and it's been fun to truly get to know a composer well, like listening to the entirety or at least the known entirety of their works. And yeah, like what a great way to, in this case, it's often repurposing time in the car. Like, talk about what can so easily be dead time. And I'm sure people are listening to this in the car, and that's great. You should be doing that. That's wonderful for your self development. But, if you run out of podcasts or whatever, like, you might consider doing a long term listening project, because I am getting through all of Mozart literally just doing it while driving my kids around in the car.
And they're listening as well.
Sometimes they make me turn it off, but some of it is more, relaxed, and some is like, okay, mom, this is a Mozart opera. This is not one of his good operas. When you listen to the entirety, it's not all the magic flute. He wrote other things too, and so you're getting kind of the mediocre opera, and
Right.
sometimes they have less patience with that.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. It's funny. I love classical music and I listen, but I've listened a lot as I've gotten older. I always liked it, but I didn't play music, so I didn't have that connection to understanding how impressive the works were. And so the older I get, I listen to it most every day at a point where I want to slow down or when I want to think. And so I like to have some kind of background noise, and so it's not noise, it's actually really enlightening to me. And the other thing that our kids' generations don't often get is that when albums came out, they were designed to listen from song 1 through the end, and so I still love to do that. And they're like, "Why would you do that? You can just download 1 song. This is the best song on the album." Like, it's so ridiculous, and so I still like the story. I like the whole thing. So the kids don't always see it the way that we do as we get older. So,
For sure.
um, I think that we get consumed with our calendars. How do you make space for patience and opportunities as they come? Is there anything that you found that's valuable to help people? Because sometimes I feel like I can get too scheduled, and I want to have that openness. I'm just curious at that concept.
I'm a big fan of scheduling in open space. I mean, the problem, especially if you're busy or you have a lot of demands on your time, space that is not claimed will be taken from you if you're not very careful about setting boundaries with it. And so it helps to actually preserve some open space. And if you work with a lot of people, I mean, you could call it whatever you want, but to have some space that is not available without people making a fuss. Obviously, if it's the only time that a group of 20 people who are absolutely have to get together can meet, like, okay, fine. But they need a good reason. It's not just like, we thought we'd talk now. But you try to protect open time. For many people, Fridays might be better for doing this. That Fridays tend to be a little bit lightly scheduled anyway for many people. So if you can try and say block Friday mornings to be open, and in that space, some of it will be catch up from the week, but some of it will also be like, oh, what would be good to think about now? Like, who haven't I talked to in a while? Oh, I keep thinking about that one topic. Let me just go read that article about it. And it's in that open space that you start to have ideas and pursue them. But open space in general is good. Like, you never want to be so overwhelmed that your first thought is always no. Because when your first thought is always no, you're putting up a wall that's, going to keep out bad stuff, which is fine. But it's also going to keep away any good stuff that doesn't have an explicit invitation. And the problem, if you are not, just so incredibly rich and famous that people are beating down your door with opportunities, is most opportunities do not show up gift wrapped. Like, you have to actually put in a little bit of effort to get them. It's that, somebody reaches out to you. It's like, oh, I would love to, have a conversation with you sometime. And you're like, too busy. No, go away. Whereas if you have some open space, you're like, oh yeah, well, that person sounds kind of like they do interesting work. Yeah, maybe I'll talk to them. And you talk to them, and that's when they introduce you to, their brother-in-law who has a business that does something that you are actually really trying to get into. And it's like, that's where the opportunities come. But you're not going to seize those opportunities if you're feeling so scarce with your time, feeling like time is so scarce that you can't give it to things that you don't know are immediately going to pan out.
Yeah, it's so good and so true. I think a lot of times when you're overwhelmed and worked in general, you shut down and your energy shuts down. And so the energy you put out into the world is not the kind of energy that attracts the kind of people that you need to be having those conversations with. So the more you have a little bit of open space, the more likely you are to be able to talk to someone at the coffee shop and meet that person that might be able to take your business to that next level.
And
Um,
and the thing I want to throw in here is that it's not just about being overwhelmed at work. Oftentimes, it's that people feel overwhelmed in their personal lives. And that's when they feel like they can't take on anything new. Like, they're trying to keep work confined to the absolute smallest amount it can. Like, they've got so much stuff going on and feel so overwhelmed with their home lives that they can't say yes to new things. And so they're not seeking out new opportunities. And that's, sometimes in life we have to do that, right? Like, if you're dealing with a serious family illness, or maybe you just moved or something. I mean, there are phases of life where you have to recognize that your personal life is going to be, all consuming. But if that's just the normal run of show, then you're always going to be pushing things away that might be fun to do. And so I think, we want to think about how we can have open space in our personal lives too, whether it's, having enough space, like, especially if you have little kids, making sure you have enough help with the little kids, that you have space to do things like think, to go for a walk if you want to call a friend if you want to meet somebody for coffee. Like, make sure you have the systems in place that chaos will not ensue if you do these things, so that you have the ability to seek new opportunities in all spheres of life.
so YouTube has this cool feature where they pick the next video for you, and it's right here on this screen. So I hope you enjoy this next video.